There are moments in life that change you forever, not because they're violent, not because they're loud, but because they're quiet and confusing. And they force you to see the world differently than you did just moments before. This is the story of Marcus Williams, a 28-year-old graphic designer, a son, a brother, a man who believed that kindness could bridge any divide, a man who smiled at a police officer and still ended up in handcuffs. This isn't a story about hatred. It's a story about fear, about assumptions, about the invisible lines we draw between us and them without even realizing it. And most importantly, it's a story about what happens when one human being decides to see another human being for who they really are. Chapter 1, The Morning, 1:36. It was a Tuesday morning in late September. The kind of morning where the air still holds a hint of summer warmth, but the leaves are just beginning to turn. Marcus had always loved this time of year. It reminded him of new beginnings. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie. Navy blue with thin silver stripes. His mother had given it to him for his birthday last year, and he wore it whenever he had an important client meeting. Today was one of those days. "You look good, man," he told his reflection, smiling. Marcus had inherited his father's smile, wide, genuine, the kind that reached his eyes and made strangers feel like old friends. His apartment was small but comfortable. Walls covered with framed posters of his favorite design work. A corner dedicated to his vinyl collection. Plants his sister Sarah kept insisting he'd kill, but somehow managed to keep alive. He grabbed his messenger bag, checked for his laptop, his portfolio, his wallet. Everything was there. Everything was perfect. "This is your day, Marcus," he whispered to himself. "This is the one." The client he was meeting, Anderson and Associates, could change everything. It was the kind of account that could take his freelance career to the next level, the kind of opportunity he'd been working toward for 5 years. He locked his apartment door and headed down the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the quiet building. Outside, the neighborhood was just waking up. Mrs. Chen was opening her flower shop across the street. The smell of fresh bread drifted from the bakery on the corner. A jogger passed by with her golden retriever. Marcus breathed it all in. This was his neighborhood. These were his people. He checked his watch. 8:47 a.m. The meeting was at 10 Dao, downtown. He had plenty of time, but Marcus was never late. Being on time showed respect. His father had taught him that. He decided to walk to the subway station. It was only 6 blocks, and the morning was too beautiful to waste underground. Marcus turned onto Riverside Avenue, a tree-lined street with historic brownstones on one side and small boutique shops on the other. He'd walked this route 100 times. Halfway down the block, he noticed a police cruiser parked at the curb. Not unusual. There was a coffee shop nearby that officers frequented, but then Marcus saw something that made him pause. An elderly white woman, maybe 70, maybe older, was struggling with several shopping bags at the entrance to her building. One bag had torn and oranges were rolling across the sidewalk. Marcus didn't hesitate. His mother had raised him better than to walk past someone who needed help. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called out, quickening his pace. "Let me help you with those." The woman looked up, startled. For just a moment, a fraction of a second, Marcus saw something flash across her face. Was it fear, surprise? He couldn't quite tell, but then her expression softened. "Oh, you're very kind, young man. Thank you." Marcus gathered the oranges, placed them in one of her bags, and helped her carry everything to her door. "You're an angel," she said, her voice warm. "My grandson usually helps me, but he's away at college now." "No problem at all," Marcus replied, smiling. "You have a good day, ma'am." As he turned to continue his walk, he felt good, lighter. This was the kind of morning where everything just felt right. That's when he heard the voice. "Excuse me, sir. Can you stop for a moment?" Marcus turned. A police officer had emerged from the cruiser and was walking toward him. The officer was white, probably in his mid-30s, with a military-style haircut and reflective sunglasses that made it impossible to see his eyes. Marcus's heart did something strange. It didn't race, not yet, but it shifted. A subtle change in rhythm that he'd felt before but could never quite explain to his white friends. Still, Marcus smiled. his natural warm smile. "Good morning, officer," he said. "How can I help you?" The officer didn't return the smile. "I need to ask you a few questions," the officer said, his hand resting on his belt near his radio. "What's your name?" Marcus's smile faltered slightly, but he kept his voice friendly. "Marcus Williams." "Is something wrong? What are you doing in this neighborhood, Mr. Williams?" The question landed like a stone in Marcus's stomach. What was he doing in this neighborhood? He lived here. He'd lived here for 3 years. He walked this street almost every day. I live here," Marcus said, pointing back toward his building. "I'm just walking to the subway. I have a meeting downtown." The officer's expression didn't change. "Do you have identification?" "Of course," Marcus said, reaching slowly for his wallet. He'd been taught, by his father, by his uncle, by every black man in his life, to move slowly around police. Never make sudden movements. Always announce what you're doing. "I'm reaching for my wallet in my back pocket," Marcus said clearly. "It has my ID." He pulled out his wallet and extracted his driver's license, handing it to the officer. The officer took it, studied it for what felt like an eternity, then spoke into his radio. Marcus couldn't hear everything, but he caught fragments. "Male, 6'1", navy jacket." Marcus stood there, confused. The elderly woman had gone inside. The street was quiet. A few people walked by, some glancing over, most keeping their eyes straight ahead. "Officer," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm, "can you tell me what this is about?" "I'm happy to cooperate, but I have an important meeting." "Sir, I need you to remain calm and answer my questions," the officer interrupted. "Were you just interacting with that woman?" "Yes," Marcus said, relief flooding through him. "So that's what this was about, a misunderstanding. She dropped her groceries and I helped her carry them. She can confirm that if you—" "Sir, I'm going to need you to place your hands behind your back." Time seemed to stop. "What?" Marcus's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," the officer repeated, his voice harder now, more authoritative. "But I didn't. I was just helping her. I live here." "Officer, please, I have my ID. You can call—" "Sir, this is your last warning. Turn around and place your hands behind your back, or I will use force." Marcus felt his whole body go cold. His hands started shaking. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not on a beautiful Tuesday morning when everything was supposed to be perfect. He thought about his meeting. He thought about his mother. He thought about the conversation he'd have to have later, the one he never thought he'd have to have. But most of all, he thought about survival. Slowly, Marcus turned around. He placed his hands behind his back, his messenger bag still hanging from his shoulder. The handcuffs were cold against his wrists. The click of the metal closing felt final, like a door slamming shut. "You're detaining me?" Marcus's voice cracked slightly. He hated that it cracked. He wanted to sound strong, composed, in control, but he was terrified. "We received a call about suspicious activity in the area," the officer said, guiding Marcus toward the police cruiser. "A person matching your description was reported acting suspiciously near a residential building." Suspicious? Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. "I was helping an elderly woman with her groceries." "That's suspicious?" The officer didn't answer. He was speaking into his radio again, requesting backup. Backup. For what? Marcus thought. For a man who helped someone carry oranges? A small crowd had begun to gather. Marcus recognized some faces. The barista from the coffee shop. A man who walked his dog past Marcus's building every morning. A woman in yoga pants holding a yoga mat. Their eyes said everything their mouths didn't. Some showed concern. Some showed uncomfortable recognition, as if they'd always known this could happen. Some looked away, unwilling to get involved. A young white woman with a phone was recording. Marcus noticed her but couldn't bring himself to feel grateful or angry or anything. He just felt numb. "Officer, please," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "My wallet has my ID. My address is on there. You can verify—" "Sir, you need to stop talking." "But I have rights. Don't I have the right to know what I'm being detained for?" Another cruiser pulled up. A second officer emerged, this one older, black, with gray at his temples. His name tag read Officer Johnson. Officer Johnson approached, surveying the scene with careful eyes. "What's the situation, Miller?" he asked the first officer. Officer Miller, Marcus finally had a name for him, gestured toward Marcus. Call came in about suspicious activity. Subject matches the description. I approached for questioning and he became agitated. I didn't become agitated, Marcus said, his voice rising despite himself. I answered every question. I showed my ID. I just asked why I was being detained. Officer Johnson looked at Marcus, then at Officer Miller, then at the small crowd of onlookers. Miller, let me talk to him, Johnson said quietly. Officer Miller hesitated, then stepped back. Officer Johnson approached Marcus, his demeanor different. Not soft exactly, but human. What's your name, son? Johnson asked. Marcus Williams. The words came out tired now, defeated. Where do you live, Marcus? 437. Riverside, apartment 3B, 3 blocks that way. Marcus nodded with his head since his hands were still cuffed behind him. What were you doing before Officer Miller approached you? I was helping Mrs. I don't know her name. An elderly woman. She dropped her groceries. I helped her carry them inside. Then I was walking to the subway. I have a client meeting at 10. Officer Johnson's eyes flicked to Marcus's tie, his polished shoes, his messenger bag with the design studio logo. A client meeting, Johnson repeated. I'm a graphic designer, freelance, Anderson and Associates downtown. They're considering me for a major contract. Marcus heard his own voice and hated how pleading it sounded. Why did he have to justify his existence? Why did he have to prove he was worthy of basic human dignity? Johnson pulled out his own radio. Dispatch, can you run an address for me? 437 Riverside Avenue, apartment 3B, looking for a Marcus Williams. They waited. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, could hear traffic in the distance, could hear someone's phone camera still recording. The radio crackled. Address confirmed. Lease in the name of Marcus Anthony Williams, age 28. No warrants. No priors. Officer Johnson turned to Officer Miller. Miller, uncuff him. Sir, the call. I said uncuff him. The handcuffs came off. Marcus rubbed his wrists, feeling the indentations the metal had left on his skin. He'd been cuffed for maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Mr. Williams, Officer Johnson said, I apologize for the confusion. You're free to go. Free to go. As if this was just a minor inconvenience. As if the next 29 years of Marcus's life wouldn't be shaped by these 10 minutes. Marcus looked at his watch. 9:23 a.m., he'd miss his meeting. Even if he ran, even if the subway was perfectly timed, he wouldn't make it. My meeting, Marcus said softly. I won't make it. Officer Miller had retreated to his cruiser, speaking into his radio, his body language defensive. Officer Johnson sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to carry decades of weight. I can give you a ride, Johnson offered. To your meeting. It's the least... No. The word came out harder than Marcus intended. No, thank you, officer. The idea of sitting in a police car, even as a gesture of apology, made Marcus's skin crawl. I understand, Johnson said quietly, and somehow Marcus believed he did. The crowd was dispersing now. The woman with the phone had stopped recording. Life was moving on as it always did for everyone except Marcus. Can I ask you something? Marcus said, finally meeting Johnson's eyes. What did the call say? The one about suspicious activity? Johnson hesitated. A concerned citizen reported a black male in his late 20s, tall, wearing dark clothing, lingering outside a residential building in a predominantly white neighborhood. The caller said he seemed to be casing the building. Marcus felt something break inside him. Not violently, quietly, like a hairline fracture in glass. I was helping someone, he said. I was just helping someone, I know. Do you? Marcus's voice was sharper now. Do you really know? Because Officer Miller didn't know. He saw me, saw my skin, and decided I was a threat before I even opened my mouth. I smiled at him. I complied with everything. And I still ended up in handcuffs. Johnson didn't argue. Didn't defend. He just listened. You want to know the worst part? Marcus continued, surprised to find tears stinging his eyes. I believed it. I really believed that if I was polite enough, educated enough, dressed well enough, smiled wide enough, I believed I could be different. That I could be the exception. But there is no exception, is there? Because the rules aren't about what I do. They're about what I am. Marcus, I have to call my client, Marcus said, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. I have to explain why I'm not showing up to the most important meeting of my career. What do I tell them? Sorry, I was detained while walking to the subway? Sorry, someone thought helping an elderly woman was suspicious? Johnson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something Marcus didn't expect. You tell them the truth, and if they don't understand, they don't deserve your work. Marcus looked up, surprised. I'm not going to stand here and tell you this was okay, Johnson continued. I'm not going to tell you it was just a misunderstanding. Because it wasn't. It was racial profiling. It was fear masquerading as protection. And it happens every single day to people who look like us. Us. The word hung in the air between them. I became a cop because I wanted to change things, Johnson said. I wanted to be the buffer, the translator, the one who could stop moments like this before they happened. But 23 years in, and I'm still cleaning up messes I can't prevent. Then what's the point? Marcus asked. If you can't change it, what's the point? The point, Johnson said carefully, is that I'm here now, with you, and you're safe, and you're free. And that's not nothing, Marcus. It should be everything. It should be the baseline, but it's not. So today, it's something. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. Part of him wanted to rage. Part of him wanted to break down. Part of him just wanted to go home, crawl into bed, and pretend this morning never happened. I'm going to file a report, Johnson said, about this encounter, about the unnecessary escalation. It probably won't change anything, but it'll be on record. And Officer Miller will be reminded of proper protocols for community interactions. Johnson's voice was carefully neutral, which told Marcus everything about how little those reminders would matter. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed his client's number. A secretary answered, Hi, this is Marcus Williams. I had a 10 o'clock with Mr. Anderson. I'm calling because I've had an emergency situation, a family emergency. The lie came easier than the truth. I need to reschedule. I'm so sorry. The secretary was kind, professional. They rescheduled for Thursday. Marcus hung up, not sure whether to feel relieved or devastated. Marcus didn't go home. He couldn't face his empty apartment yet, couldn't face the silence and his own thoughts. Instead, he walked. Not toward the subway, not toward anywhere in particular. Just walked. He found himself at Riverside Park, sitting on a bench facing the water. The morning was still beautiful, the sun still warm, the leaves still turning gold and red. But Marcus saw it all differently now. He called his sister. Sarah answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? Shouldn't you be in your big meeting right now? Marcus's throat tightened. Sarah? Something happened. He told her everything. The elderly woman. The groceries. The smile. The handcuffs. The confusion and fear and humiliation of standing on a public sidewalk, a prisoner for the crime of helping someone. Sarah was quiet for a long time after he finished. Then she said, Are you okay? Marcus, tell me you're okay. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know what okay means anymore. Where are you? Riverside Park, by the water. Stay there. I'm coming. Sarah, you're at work. Stay there. She hung up. Marcus knew there was no point arguing. Sarah had always been his protector, even though he was 2 years older. While he waited, Marcus thought about his father. Gerald Williams had died when Marcus was 21. A heart attack, sudden and cruel. But before he died, he'd had the talk with Marcus. Not about sex, about survival. When you're stopped by police, his father had said. And you will be stopped, Marcus. Don't argue. Don't fight. Don't try to explain. Just survive. Get home. That's all that matters. Get home alive. Marcus had nodded, understanding in theory but not in practice. He'd been stopped a few times since then, twice while driving, once while jogging through a nice neighborhood. But he'd never been handcuffed. Never been detained. Never felt quite so erased. His father had survived every encounter he'd had, right up until his heart gave out from the stress of living in a body that the world treated as a threat. I'm sorry, Dad, Marcus whispered to the water. I tried to smile. I tried to be everything you taught me to be. It wasn't enough. A jogger passed by, an old man feeding ducks, a young couple pushing a stroller, life continuing as if Marcus's world hadn't just shifted off its axis. Sarah arrived 45 minutes later, slightly breathless from the train ride and walk. She sat down next to Marcus without a word, just wrapped her arm around his shoulders. They sat like that for a while. Brother and sister, two people who shared the same brown skin, the same inherited fear, the same inherited strength. "Mama's going to lose it when she hears," Sarah finally said. "I know. You have to tell her. I know. She's going to want to sue, to file complaints, to call everyone from the mayor to the president." Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. "I know. What do you want to do?" Sarah asked. It was the right question. Not what should you do or what are you going to do, but what did he want? Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it. "I want to stop being afraid," he said. "I want to walk down the street where I live without wondering if someone's going to call the police because I'm suspicious. I want to help an old lady with her groceries without worrying that kindness will be weaponized against me. I want to exist without having to prove I deserve to exist." "That's not too much to want," Sarah said quietly. "It feels like it is." "It shouldn't be." They sat until the sun climbed higher, until the morning became afternoon, until the fear in Marcus's chest began to loosen its grip. Not disappearing, never disappearing, but becoming something he could carry instead of something that carried him. 2 days later, Marcus sat in the conference room at Anderson and Associates. He'd made his presentation. Nailed it, actually. Mr. Anderson and his team were impressed, but as Marcus packed up his portfolio, Mr. Anderson said, "Marcus, before you go, I wanted to apologize for the mix-up with your first appointment. Your secretary mentioned a family emergency?" Marcus paused. He could let it go. Could maintain the lie. Could keep this part of himself separate from his professional life, the way he'd always done, or he could tell the truth. "It wasn't a family emergency," Marcus said slowly. "I was detained by police while walking to our meeting. I was helping an elderly woman with her groceries, and someone called in a suspicious person report. I was handcuffed on the sidewalk. By the time I was released, I'd missed our appointment. The room went very quiet. Mr. Anderson's face did something complicated. Surprise. Discomfort, something that might have been shame. He searched for words. "That's unacceptable. That shouldn't have happened to you." "No," Marcus agreed. "It shouldn't have." "I'm sorry," Marcus nodded. He was tired of apologies, but he also recognized that Mr. Anderson's discomfort was its own kind of progress. Comfort was the enemy of change. "I'm offering you the contract," Mr. Anderson said. "Not out of pity or guilt. You earned it, but I want you to know that we value you here. Not just your work, you. And if you ever need to talk about experiences like that, or if there's anything we can do to support you, please let us know." Marcus left that meeting with a signed contract and something else, a small, fragile sense that maybe, just maybe, telling the truth mattered. That evening, he went back to Riverside Avenue. Back to the spot where it had happened. The elderly woman was outside again, this time successfully managing her groceries. "Oh," she recognized him immediately. "Young man, I wanted to thank you again for your help the other day. You were such a gentleman." "Ma'am," Marcus said gently, "did you know that after I helped you, I was detained by police?" Her face fell. "What? No. Why would they?" "Someone reported me as suspicious." Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God, I had no idea. That's horrible. I would have said something. I would have told them." "It's okay," Marcus said, meaning it. "You didn't know, but I wanted you to know what happened. Because this is the world we live in, where helping someone can be seen as threatening if you're wearing the wrong skin. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." "I know," Marcus said. "But sorry isn't enough anymore. We need to do better. All of us," she nodded, understanding settling over her like a weight she'd choose to carry. Marcus walked home that evening feeling something he hadn't expected to feel. Hope. Not the naive hope of his younger self, the one who thought that being one of the good ones would protect him, but a harder hope. A wiser hope. The hope that comes from surviving something that should never happen and choosing to keep existing anyway. Keep helping anyway. Keep smiling anyway. Not because the world deserved his smile, but because he refused to let fear steal it from him. Marcus Williams would continue to walk down Riverside Avenue, would continue to help people who needed help, would continue to exist fully and unapologetically in a world that sometimes saw him as a threat, because that was the only way. Marcus's story is one of thousands, millions really. Stories of people who do everything right and still find themselves handcuffed, questioned, suspected, feared. But his story is also about choice. The choice to survive, to speak up, to refuse to let prejudice define who he is or who he can become. Change doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in the accumulation of moments. When people like Marcus tell their truth, when people like Officer Johnson file those reports, when people like that elderly woman choose to listen and learn instead of look away, we all have a role to play in creating a world where helping someone with their groceries is just that, help. Not suspicion, not threat, just humanity, extended from one person to another. The question is, what role will you play?